Okay, Bismillah. I have a number of points to say, a little bit disjointed. I haven't prepared, obviously, as a conversation. But let's begin from the basics. Let us begin with the principle that is universal across the globe, in America, England, Canada, between all of us on this platform. We should all agree with the principle, the usul, the paradigm that is stemming from our tradition, our faith. Pretty much all of mainstream Sunnism, dare I even say Shiism and whatnot, would probably acknowledge this principle. It is Quranic in its essence. It is prophetic. The seerah demonstrates this over and over again. And that is the following. The principle is the following. And that is, when it comes to engaging with another person whom you disagree with, when it comes to allying yourself with a third party, organization, person, then you weigh the pros and cons, masalih and mafasid. And the masalih and mafasid are both worldly and religious. Both of these are weighed. And if you feel that overall the masalih of the both dunyawi and dini perspective outweigh, the pros outweigh the cons, then you may ally yourself for the greater good, even if there's going to be an incidental, a negative that comes that is not intended. You're not rallying for that. You're not calling for that. You're calling for a greater good. And it kind of sort of sometimes necessitates a smaller evil, right? This is pretty much universally acknowledged to be the mainstream principle of Sunni Islam. And it is demonstrated in every single strategic alliance, every single, even throughout Islamic history as well. وَتَعَوَنُوا بِالْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى comes from the Quran as well. The issue comes in the application, always. The issue comes, who's going to weigh and assess the masalih and mafasid, the pros and the cons? Who's going to really go through and figure out, okay, this con here, it is so negative that it outweighs every single pro that you bring to me. And therefore, we come to the very difficult reality, which is that allying yourself with a third party, with a third entity, with another person, always has an element of ijtihad to it. It is not qat'i. It is not from the qat'iyat, from the yaqiniyat. It has a gray area to it. And that is why Ahlul Sunnah has always made it so problematic to make tabdi' based upon associations, to make excommunication based upon your alliance with even a ruler, even a dictator and whatnot. And throughout the Arab Spring, I gave multiple posts about this reality that many of our scholars just tacitly supported status quo. They didn't sign the fatwas for the death warrants, but neither did they stand up and oppose the dictators, because they genuinely thought, you know what, this isn't a battle I want to fight. I want to preach and teach the masses. In order to do so, I'll have to give a tacit nod to this evil person. I don't like him, this king, I don't like him, but in the end of the day, it's better than the instability that's going to come. And he has to do something negative in order to get that overall positive. Now, the principle is undisputed. The application may be disputed. However, we have to be brave enough, mature enough, courageous enough, wise enough that when we dispute the application, we do not make the other person the enemy. We say, I disagree with your application. I know where you're coming from and I really don't like it, but you are not my enemy because your usul is the same. Unfortunately, we don't see this in the online social reality. So when it comes to, for example, this particular, another point, by the way, before I get to this particular person, we need to teach our communities, we need to teach our masjid-going folks that politicians are not their role models. The role models are the inheritors of the prophets. These are the ulama. Politicians are not where we take our morality from. And if we teach them this, then inshallah it's going to go a long way to try to get to what Brother Hassan was talking about. This also means that since the rule is we weigh the pros and cons, what this means, therefore, is that every single person, every single activist, every single shaykh or da'i actually can take that rule and apply it to his or her personal life. And the net result of that rule might actually be different for that person. Hence, what are the masalih and mafasid for Yasir Qadhi to come with that politician versus what are the masalih and mafasid for Care National to go with that politician? It's not the same thing. And we have to raise the academic discourse of our communities to understand that. Sometimes, perhaps usually, the ulama should have the most narrow definition of masalih and mafasid. The ulama should have the highest caliber that, you know what, I don't want to associate with somebody who's so evil or whatnot. And that is why to this day, I have never explicitly endorsed a politician, said to go vote for a politician, myself voted for a politician, fundraise for one of these people in office, never done so, because I feel the people of knowledge have to have the highest. But I also understand where Hassan is coming from and others are coming from, that if community activists have a different weighing of masalih and mafasid, even if I don't agree with it, I'm not going to demonize them. I'm not going to problematize them. And if need to, I'll pull them aside. I'll speak to Hassan directly, but I'm not going to make Hassan an evil target for my community. I'm not going to say completely nefariously and slanderously that Hassan Shibli supports, gay marriage because he supports politician X who has supported policy Y. And you make a tasalsul, you make this, a complete McCarthyism of, well, you were seen with somebody who was seen with somebody who was seen with somebody. We don't work this way. Ahl Sunnah, Islam is above this. So let there be differences of opinion and let there be different tactics for different people. That's always been my position. I've never preached for supporting a particular politician. Whoever says so is really, astaghfirullah, slanderously lying. I have never, and again, now that you're being specific, subhanallah, as Allah is my witness, I was invited to this conference of ICNA because of family engagements. I flew in Sunday, I flew back Monday morning. The person you spoke about spoke Saturday. Wallahi, I didn't even know she was speaking until after I came back, and a storm broke over the internet. The accusation that YQ and Umar Suleiman were asked permission, they gave it, they vetted her. Kadhib and slander as usual. Had they asked me, I would have personally said, no, I don't agree. She should be invited to a mainstream Muslim convention. They never asked. If I had known, I wouldn't have stood next to her. I didn't stand next to her. If I had known, I would have still gone another day. I don't see a problem, by the way, going on Sunday and she's speaking on Saturday. I wouldn't have changed my position. I'll be honest. I don't care what anybody says. You're going to really make everybody a deviant who attends and whatnot. That's a level of Kharijism that's just crazy, to be honest. So even if I know she's coming on Saturday, I would have told Ikna, why are you inviting her? And maybe publicly said something to show that I don't agree with that. But I'm not going to boycott an entire convention because I disagree with one speaker. That's not the way forward. Also, I agree with Hassan's point. And Shadi, I want you to also answer this when you get the microphone back. I need to finish a few points. That yes, I agree that they shouldn't be invited. I actually agree with that. But now, are you going to demonize ICNA and say that ICNA or any other organization is tacitly agreeing with everything she says? Or are you going to understand, like Hassan Shibli says, they have their reasons for doing so that I strongly disagree with. They want to have access to her. They want to perhaps persuade her to tone down. They want to, showcase some positives about her. So the application of the principle was misguided, but it doesn't make them misguided. That's really the key point of this entire conversation. Before I finish, a few final points here. A simple example, a realistic example. I know for a fact that this person, the one that we're talking about, she has helped numerous families whose passports, what's the technical term? They're on the no-fly list, or they're not given visas or whatever. So they would go to this particular Congress lady, and she would help them do something totally legal, bring their wives, bring their daughters and children back from these countries that Trump had banned, right? So here's a brother here, his wife and daughters are stuck in that no man's land. Years go by, they go to this Congress lady, she helps them, and mashallah, they're reunited. And this is the law, she has the right to do that. Now, suppose more and more of these refugee families are seeing this is the only person that's helping. I'm being hypothetical, even though this is a real example. Suppose they say, this is the only Congress lady that's actually helping. My wife and kids are living with me now. And so they start fundraising for her, and they start spreading the word amongst the community. And they say, you know what? They're helping bringing our wife and kids back, right? My point as Shaykh Yasir Qadhi is, I'm not going to demonize those Muslims. I'm not going to go on the platform and raise funds because I disagree with what this lady is doing. But I want to teach my community tolerance. And I'm sorry, but sometimes being, a person of knowledge means you have to go against the flow. Wallahi, the easiest thing for me would be to throw her under the bus. The easiest thing for my popularity, and we see what happens when some internet, social media, whatever people, when they do that, their votes go up and they become popular because that's the easiest thing to do. But a person of knowledge has a responsibility. And my responsibility is to raise the bar of education and to teach people that, hey, those refugee families, the masalih for them, they take the same rule that we all agree to, and they apply it to this Congress lady. And they say, you know what? I need my wife and daughters. I can't have them in the war-torn country. And this is the lady that's helping me. I need her to get into office again. I'm going to fundraise for her. I'm going to have the majority of community vote for her. Now you come to this brother and say, brother, don't you know she's dancing at a gay parade? You know what this brother's going to say? He says, astaghfirullah, I don't agree with that, but I want my wife and kids to be here, right? That's my point. We need to teach our community that there are two sides. I don't agree with this politician. That's why I've never supported her. Pause here, footnote. Somebody is going to dig through my 2,000 hours of videos, find a small clip here and there, embarrass me, whatnot. So let me say for the record, when she was elected, and before she danced in the Pride Parade or whatever, I did have some generic statements that yes, there's nice to have a hijabi because there's going to be some type of symbolism, some type of generic that was before she danced in the parade or whatever. I've never praised her after that video has come out, not one word since then, because I'm really disappointed and irritated. I also, when her life was threatened by the far right, you really remember that when the FBI got involved and she was threatened, she was the threat of assassination came because she was a Muslimah in Congress, right? And her identity of Islam became paramount, right? At that stage, when the far right wants to kill her, they don't care about her political stances. She becomes a female, black, I'm saying this bluntly, refugee, hijabi lady. Every single negative they have in their minds, she represents it. At that point in time, wallahi, us people have to be wiser. And even if she has views that we strongly disagree with, right? At that point in time when her life is threatened, because she represents Islam, I hate what she's done in this aspect. May Allah forgive her and guide her. It's a huge mistake. But at the same time, the people who want to kill her are not killing her for that stance. They're killing her because she represents my faith and your faith. At that point in time, if you are so narrow-minded and so backwards that you don't see the reality that their hatred of her is in fact a hatred of you and your faith and your deen and your prophet, and you don't have the sensibility to come together and protect her as a Muslimah, even though you might personally not think she's a Muslimah. Here's the irony. You might not even think she's a Muslimah, but at that point in time, the far right not only thinks she is, symbolizes Islam for them, and they want to kill her, vote her out of office. At that point in time, you know, we do have to come together as a community and say, even if I disagree with this stance of hers, she has a right to be a Muslimah or claim to be a Muslimah or a hijabi or whatever, and she had the right to be in Congress. Now that nuance is lost on those, let me be gentle because my anger is really frustrating sometimes, on those who don't think deeply. To be brutally honest, wallahi, this needs to be said. Those people that are the biggest critics, they are speaking from the luxury of privileged backgrounds. It's not their families caught in war-torn zones. It's not them who have to lobby Congress for specific issues. They're coming from positions of privilege and power. They've never really been forced to, you know, get involved with the reality of the situation, and they're living relatively comfortable lives. Me personally, I also come from, alhamdulillah, that type of privileged background. That's why I'm not really involved directly, Hassan and others are. But my point is, as a community leader, as a person of knowledge, I cannot have two fellow Muslims demonizing each other. I cannot have two Muslims who love Allah, love the Messenger, project their weaknesses and their anger onto each other. Final point, I know I've said a lot here. Final point. We also have to be mature enough to rise above finding a simple, you know, target, a scapegoat for the frustration that we feel. We're all frustrated at the rise of the LGBT. We're all frustrated at the stupidity of the trans movement, right? Now, it's so easy to blame, you know, Ilhan, or even astaghfirullah, Umar Sulaiman and Yasir Qadhi, which I've seen so many times. I mean, this is now the default because of these social media, you know, drama queens. They literally say Yasir Qadhi and Umar Sulaiman, you know, mainstream Ilhan Umar. That's pure kadhib. I've never fundraised for her, never introduced her. Pure lie. They literally say that. And then Ilhan Umar is what made trans movements into America. So basically, Yasir Qadhi and Umar Sulaiman are directly responsible for this filth around you. Wallahi, dear parents, your TV set in your house is 1,000,000 times more responsible for the corruption of your family than Ilhan Umar, much less, you know, religious figures. So calm down. Don't find an easy target, because the target is far more difficult, and move beyond demonizing fellow Muslims and understand the world is a very difficult place. Wallahi, we are so hurt at what our sister has done in this regard. I make dua that Allah guides her. You know, somebody said to me, why don't you publicly curse her if that's the case? And I said, you know, you remind me of Imam Ahmad and his son, Abdullah. When Abdullah said to Imam Ahmad that, oh, Imam Ahmad, do you love Yazid? And Imam Ahmad said, can any Muslim love Yazid? Can any Muslim love somebody who's supporting LGBT dancing at a gay parade? And so Abdullah said to his father, why don't you curse Yazid? And Imam Ahmad said, have you ever seen me to be vulgar, you know, cursing another, you know, Muslim? I don't see the point of cursing or whatnot, but I make dua for her. And I have very clearly disobeyed dua that Allah guides her. And I very clearly have dissociated from such politicians. In every lecture, I say that, look, these politicians, we don't learn our morality from them. We don't learn our akhlaq from them. We learn that from the ulama. But I still say, if Hassan Shibli calls her up and wants to get benefit from her, I don't demonize Hassan Shibli. If ICNA wants to invite her for some perverted application of their logic and their view that, you know what, she needs to see that these 10,000 Muslims support her because of her Islam, so she needs to be guided to correct Islam. They're trying to use it as a token. And by the way, that is what ICNA's philosophy was. They told this to me, and I said, that's really foolish, but that's your business. I literally, they said that to me, right? Now, but the point is, they agree with the principle. I'm not going to demonize ICNA. I'm not going to throw ICNA under the bus, which is what, unfortunately, so many of these social media warriors are doing. And that is dangerous because it is, anyway, I've spoken a lot. You are literally considering the bulk of the ummah to be misguided and evil. If you're going to take this to the logical conclusion, that's exactly what the Kharijites did. Go ahead and disagree. Say ICNA made a mistake, but ICNA is not evil. Go ahead and say, I strongly disagree, but that doesn't make the other person an evil person who supports evil and batil. That's the key point I need to get across. And with that,
Sheikh Yasir, I want to ask you to clarify something real quick. You said, just because I'm auditing what you said, and I'm thinking about how someone's gonna run through your statement with a fine-tooth comb.
As they always do, which is, by the way, again, that's a problem. Wallahi, it's a problem. Even this attitude, and I've spoken against this so many times. Wallahi, if your niyyah is to just find faults and find the ambiguous word, may Allah help you there. I mean, it's not Islam anyway. This is not the way forward. Anyway, what's your question?
I'll ask you. So basically, because you mentioned that you're right, that people are claiming that, Omar Suleiman and Yasir Qadhi are platforming this kind of behavior, this person, and therefore this kind of behavior, etc., right? I think you should speak for yourself, because what's going to happen is you're clarifying your own position here. What they're going to do is you're going to take that clip and be like, well, Omar Suleiman did this. I don't know what Sheikh Omar Suleiman did, but I think you should just cover yourself and just say, I speak for Yasir Qadhi only. Does that make sense?
I do speak for Yasir Qadhi only.
Looking like a true lawyer.
I have spoken. Yes, Hassan, you're the lawyer. I have spoken to Sheikh Omar many times, and overall, I know that he's in agreement with me about these principles, the qawa'id.
Right.
So even if we disagree about the application, we go back to my point here.
Right.
Is that if he sees a masalih and a pro and con that's different than mine, right?
Yep.
And he understands in his worldview that this is better for the ummah, even if I disagree, and I will, and I have disagreed, and he's disagreed with me, and I call him up. Everybody knows we are in direct contact with one another, and we agree to disagree. Sometimes I'll literally text him, Sheikh, I don't agree, you should have done that, and he'll do the same with me. It doesn't diminish the good that he's done, and I don't demonize his entire life because of an error in the or what I believe to be an error in the application. And this goes back to another point. Hassan brought it up very well. Subhanallah, what is wrong with understanding that this rule can change from time to place to person? Now, when I said I'm going to be neutral in this regard, right? This was when the Supreme Court was just about to rule in its favor, right? And we knew it was a lost battle. As Hassan said, hindsight's 2020, maybe we should have done something else. So what? The application can change from time to time. It's the principle that does not change. And it wasn't a universal rule that I said we're always going to remain neutral. It was actually about California and what was it, Proposition 8 or whatever. During a time, people have forgotten how Islamophobic the environment was, in the time of Obama. People have forgotten. They have a short memory span where these the DVDs of, the rise of Islamic, fascism in America was going rampant. And we were genuinely worried about our civil liberties. 22 states are trying to ban the Sharia. At that point in time, is it the wisest battle to take on, the LGBT lobby at that point in time? And, maybe if I were to go back to that time and place, I would have changed my views, but maybe I wouldn't. At that point in time, I gave my best judgment, and its application could be wrong. Allahu a'lam. But to read into that a'udhu billah, there is a support or there's an endorsement, a'udhu billah. This is subhanaka hada buhtanun azim. This is a siyasa, and siyasa is very different from the ahkam of the shara.
فيا ذلي ويا خجلي إذا ما قال لي ربي أما استحييته تعصيني ولا تخشى من العتب وتخفي الذنب عن خلقي وتأبى في الهوى قربي فتب مما جنيت عسى تعود إلى رضا الرب رضا الرب